The Bible presents an interesting tension about the nature of God when it comes to temptation. In Genesis chapter 22, verse 1, we read that God tempted Abraham. It says, "And it came to pass after these things, that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am." The command that follows is even more intense. God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac, the very son he had waited for in faith. Abraham obeys without question, trusting God, and prepares to offer his son as a burnt offering. But then, in James chapter 1, verse 13, the Bible says something different. "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man." At first glance, these two verses seem to point in opposite directions. One says God tempted Abraham. The other says God tempts no one. So how do we understand this? First, we must understand the meaning of the word tempt in these two passages. In Genesis, the Hebrew word used is nissa, which more accurately means to test, to prove, or to try. It was a test of Abraham's faith and obedience, not a temptation to sin. God was not trying to make Abraham fall, he was trying to reveal the strength of Abraham's faith. Meanwhile, in James, the Greek word used is perozo, which often means to entice to sin, or to lure into doing wrong. James is making it clear that God never tries to lure people into sin. God does not dangle evil before our eyes to make us stumble. Therefore, the apparent contradiction disappears when we realize the difference in meaning between testing and tempting. God tests to strengthen us. He tests to refine our character, to bring our hidden faith into the open. But Satan tempts in order to destroy us. God's testings are for our growth, Satan's temptations are for our downfall. Abraham's story is not a case of God leading someone into sin, but rather a supreme test of trust and obedience. This is consistent throughout the Bible. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2, Moses reminds the Israelites, "And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee, and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart." Again, the idea is not tempting into evil, but proving character, revealing true intentions. Similarly, Jesus himself was tested in the wilderness. The Bible says the Spirit led him into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. The Spirit led him there, but it was the devil who tempted. God may allow the situation, but the evil of temptation always comes from Satan, never from God. When we suffer trials today, it is important to discern this truth. Hardship, loss, disappointment, these are tests that God can use to mature us. But when evil thoughts, anger, lust, or deception whisper into our hearts, these are not from God. God strengthens, Satan seduces. So, returning to the original question, does God tempt people? No, God tests people, but he never tempts them to sin. His goal is always to refine us, never to destroy us. As James says in the same chapter, chapter 1 verse 12. "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him." God's tests, when endured faithfully, lead to blessing and victory, not to shame or failure. So the next time you face a difficult situation, remember, you are not being tempted by God to do wrong. You are being tested by God to be made strong.